Hey, this video is not for kids, so if you're kids, stop watching, but you're probably gonna keep watching anyway, even though I told you not to. This might come as a shock to some of you, but in my younger days, I was very religious. I've had many fond memories going to Sunday school on Sunday, I'm guessing. I mean, Bible cartoons were like okay, but they were still nothing in comparison to playing with my Hot Wheels Battle Force 5 action figures. Man, I got so pissed off when they put in the big toy box and I had to spend 10 minutes looking for it. But in all seriousness, I felt a sort of comfort in religion. I liked knowing that there was someone out there watching me making everything happen. It felt like everything had a greater purpose. But this belief came with some demons. Like actual demons. As a child, I was terrified of being damned to hell. I was so paranoid about my soul one day being banished to this alternate fiery dimension filled with monsters and pitchforks. And saying it now, it sounds so ridiculous. But the thing is, I wasn't just scared of the devil. After all, he was only doing his job. The thing is, God is the one who sent me there. He's the one who thinks I deserve to be there. So the thought of the creator of the universe deciding I wasn't worth it was also very unsettling. Christianity was supposed to be our guardian. It was supposed to protect us and make us feel safe. And at times it did, but others it wasn't. Around the mid to late 2010s, in fact, even still happening now, the Christian religion began to grow more and more controversial, I guess you could say. So my family all agreed to officially move away from it. There were so many sinners in the closet that I didn't really know about when I was a kid, and I think back to those days and it feels strange how what used to be the most innocent, pure thing is like this now. Now, I want to specify that I don't hate anyone or everyone just for being Christian, but I want to save that part for the end of the video. Now, the reason why I bring up all this stuff about my past and history with religion is because it's all background context for why the cartoon Morel Orel is so important to me, and why I think it's just important to the world in general, especially today. Also, it's done in stop motion, and there's a lot of stop motion puns and references in it. And as I'm sure all of you know, I absolutely despise stop motion and think it's the worst thing ever created by humanity. Morel Orel is set in the fictional town of Morelton in the fictional state of State-a-Soda. Gotta love these names. The series mainly focuses on the Puffington family, aka the picture-perfect Christian family. Well, technically they're actually Protestant. I don't really know the difference between, like, Christian, Catholic, Protestant. There's so many different, like, overlapping subcategories, and, like, I'm not really an expert on all the different, Jesus factions, but I'm just gonna say Christian, because that's what I've been saying, and it's easiest. Now, the father slash husband of the family is Clay. Now, Clay, he works a, quote, stinking dead-end job, and he's also very drunk a lot of the time. At first, one might think of Clay as a happy-go-lucky model citizen, but once you peel back the layers of deceit, you find out that he's actually a very messed up guy. And he's also having an affair with Orel's gym teacher, Danielle Stopframe. Did I mention he's also a huge hypocrite? Oral's mother, Bloberta, isn't really all that much better. Bloberta is intentionally a housewife stereotype. Every time she's on screen, she's either cooking or cleaning. But if you look slightly closer, you notice that she's like doing it in a weird way, like she's washing a turkey or vacuuming the lawn or something. She's also responsible for the existence of Clay's substance abuse issue, since when they first met, she basically peer pressured him into having alcohol, even though he doesn't even like it. And to really top things off, Bloberta actually cheated on Clay with Danielle's stop frame. Which is actually a good segue to our next character, Shapey. There isn't really a whole lot to say about Shapey since he barely knows how to speak English, but at one point he swapped places with a different child named Block, and Clay and Bloberta didn't even notice. At one point, Bloberta tries to correct the switch, but the Posable family literally decides they just don't care about Block and they let the Puppingtons keep him. The switch is important because it shows how little the parents of both families actually care about their children, since one didn't even notice and the other didn't care. And finally, we have Orel himself. Orel is about as innocent and wide-eyed as they come. He can look at any situation and see the good in it. Even though his positivity actually creates the conflict a lot of the time. Morel Orel is a lot like Phineas and Ferb, in the sense that most episodes follow a sort of formula. Every episode, Orel would learn some new message about God, and then he would completely misinterpret it and create all kinds of chaos and shenanigans, and then Clay would, get drunk and beat him with a belt. God, Jesus Christ. Sometimes Orel does actually do something bad that wouldn't warrant getting beaten, but would warrant a lesson of some kind, but Clay always teaches him bad lessons. For example, whenever Orel developed substance abuse issues, Clay was less concerned with that and more worried that Orel might start using street slang and begin butchering God's great American language. Morel Orel is the type of show where, in the moment, it's funny, but once you finish the episode and start to, reflect on what the episode was actually about, it starts to feel a lot more disturbing. Now, speaking of the humor in Morel Orel, I find it very refreshing for two main reasons. The humor of most, not all, most, animated adult shows is surprisingly very immature. They tend to rely on over-the-top, gross-out, or sexual, potty humor, stuff like that. The jokes in Morel Orel are a lot more subtle and feel really rewarding once you notice them. It also doesn't feel dated. It's not like bogged down by the pop culture references of the time or whatever. In fact, it's very ahead of its time, which brings me to the other reason I really like the humor in the show. Instead of making fun of a certain group of people that I know some adult cartoons tend to do at times, this one chooses to make fun of exclusively the racist, homophobic misogynists. They're the ones always portrayed as the dumbass idiots. It's very refreshing to see a show so proudly liberal before the era everything was forced to be diverse. Now, I don't dislike diversity, but it does sometimes feel a lot like certain creators or companies are really trying more to follow a trend than send an actual message. An example would be how Disney often proudly announces anytime they make one of their characters gay, but at the same time they also censor gay plotlines in their movies. So remember how I said that the racists are always the ones portrayed as idiots? Well, even though they are, a lot of the times they still end up with the last laugh. I mean, think about it. Every episode ends with Clay drilling some awful message into Orel's head. Every day he gets a little bit less innocent. It makes the show feel painfully real. Season 1 mostly focuses on the humor and stays very strict to the Phineas and Ferb formula, which admittedly I started to get pretty tired of around the last few episodes. In season 2, they still stick to the formula for the most part, but now they would often either diverge from it somehow or just completely avoid doing it. And also, a lot of the episodes focus a lot more on story now. The season 2 finale is a two-part episode in which Clay takes Orel out on a hunting trip, and of course, Orel refuses to kill any of the animals. As the episode continues, Clay becomes more and more frustrated. Orel gets upset and tells Clay that he's too drunk, which only really makes the situation worse. Clay lets loose his inner Redditor and then starts ranting about how he hates his life and hates women for ruining his life. In a blind panic, Orel almost shoots Clay. And in response, Clay accidentally shoots Orel. The pair remain stranded in the forest for the next few days. At one point, Orel is even forced to kill a bear. Season 3 is when Morel Orel becomes Morel Orel. Now, I think Season 2 is the best season. It does the best job of balancing humor with story and focusing a lot on the characters. Season 3 basically throws all the humor out the window, and now every episode is just start to finish depressing. But this actually makes a lot of sense. Since Season 3 is the final season, it's only natural progression that the ending would be the most dramatic. Seasons 1 and 2 would subtly but playfully poke fun at society. Season 3 it's on something else. Most of the Season 3 episodes take place either before or during the hunting trip, and the timeline gets pretty complicated at times. It also focuses a lot more on the side characters instead of just Orel. Characters who were previously just annoying one-dimensional antagonists were given a lot more depth and made a lot more sympathetic. Towards the end of the show, every character's depression reaches a boiling point. In the final episode, Clay begins cheating on Danielle with Miss Censordoll, even though he was already cheating on Bloberta with Danielle, so now he's double cheating, triple cheating. So Danielle becomes very upset by this. So Orel and Danielle begin to bond over their mutual love-hate relationship with Clay. Clay catches them, and with no choice left, he's forced to admit his true feelings for Danielle in front of Bloberta. Then there's a time jump, and we find out that in the future, Orel and Christina are happily married. Now, at first glance, I was a little taken aback by this, since we just, got the reveal of the biggest secret in the whole show, and then there's just a time jump immediately after. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to appreciate this moment. Despite the state of Orel's parents, Morel Orel, the show, isn't really anti-love or anti-happiness or anything like that. In fact, it's not even anti-Christianity. Clay and Bloberta are two people forced to follow their destiny. Clay is in love with Danielle even though his religion does not allow same-sex relations. Bloberta only married Clay because, well, all her friends got married and they looked down on her for not doing the same. Her religion also pushed her to follow something she didn't believe in. And again, Morel Orel isn't anti-Christianity. It does show the nuances in a lot of things. It acknowledges the fact that a lot of radical Christian beliefs are actually like cherry-picked lines and mistranslations from the text of the Bible. They frequently cheat on each other, but then again, neither of them even wanted to get married to the other in the first place. Their own beliefs have ensnared them in this loveless, empty, hollow marriage. In the moment where Clay confesses his true feelings for Danielle, what he's really doing is he's just simply being himself, not being controlled by his beliefs. Orel is a very naturally innocent, kind-hearted person, and he doesn't have to let his beliefs take that away from him. Orel defied his destiny. He broke the chain of abusive fathers. He found out how to be happy and live his life. Now this ending and the whole message about being true to yourself and not being defined by what you believe in is also really important to me. And you could look at this and say, oh, this is promoting atheism or whatever, but honestly, I don't think it is. After my family renounced Jesus, for a while I didn't really know what to believe in. And eventually I started thinking more and more about atheism and how their belief is that after death is just a black void. But then I thought to myself, hold on, there's no evidence that there's a heaven. There's no evidence that we get reincarnated. And really, when you think about it, there's no evidence there's a black void either. Whatever it is, it'll come when it comes. And ever since I had that thought to myself, I never once have felt scared of dying, and that was years ago. I don't want to tell anybody what they can or can't believe in, but sometimes in life, you just gotta say, fuck it, and not think about the greater meaning. Hey, if it worked for me, it can work for anybody. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I highly recommend you go check out Morel Orel for yourself, even though I, again, spoiled everything. Well, not everything. There is still a lot of, pre-finale stuff that's really worth seeing. I'd love to hear what you thought of this review, or even this show, in the comments down below. And maybe if you're comfortable and willing to be respectful, you can also talk about your opinions on religion as well. But until then, this has been Bradworst, signing off. Jesus, he lived among us.